Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this panel discussion about corporate relationship building. If you missed our intro session with Joy, you can watch that on our website, and I will drop the link in the chat. My name is Jordan Lusink. I'm the Advocacy and Programs Manager here at ArtsFund. I use she, her pronouns. And for a visual description, I'm a white woman in her 30s with glasses and strawberry blonde hair, wearing a pink tinselly sweater, and sitting in front of a blurred background. I'd like to start today's convening by acknowledging that the city of Seattle, where Arts Fund is based, is on the occupied lands of the Coast Salish people, specifically the ancestral lands of the Duwamish, Stillaguamish, Muckleshoot, and Suquamish tribes, who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. I would also like to acknowledge that many with us today are on different territories, and we join you in honoring and recognizing those as well. At today's event, we have a number of accessibility features, including Zoom-generated live captioning, which you can turn on and view the full transcript at any time during today's event. We also have ASL interpreters who we will be spotlighting, and all presenters will be doing a visual description of themselves for those who benefit from it. And finally, today's session will be recorded and shared out later after the event. Before we get started, I would like to thank the sponsors who are making our 2026 convenings possible. Thanks to our presenting sponsor, Wells Fargo. And we'd also like to thank Columbia Bank Community Impact Fund and For Culture for their additional support. Without further ado, we're gonna let our panelists introduce themselves, give a quick introduction, and then we'll jump right in. So let's see. Let's start with Randy. Randy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Jordan. I just want to make sure I was not muted there. Randy Choy. I'm the Vice President of Philanthropy Programs for Columbia Bank, and I manage the Columbia Bank Community Impact Fund. I use he, him pronouns. I am an Asian American male with black hair and wearing glasses, 50 plus in terms of my age range. I'm currently wearing a brown sweater with a light blue shirt that has a blue collar. Thank you.
All right. Let's go to Sarah Michael.
Hi, everyone. I am Sarah Michael. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a white woman with longer brown hair, and I'm new to being 40, so I'm not sure I'm ready to say I'm in my 40s, but glad to be with you today. I am the Director of Institutional Giving at the Seattle Art Museum, where I've been for about 10 years now.
Awesome. Let's go over to Sarah Bednar.
Hi, friends. So glad that you could join us today. I'm Sarah Bednar. I work at Seattle Rep as an Institutional Partnerships Director, managing corporate foundation and government funding on a team of 3. I've been there about 7.5 years. And I'm a white woman with reddish blonde hair, wearing a headset with microphone and black top today.
Awesome. And last but not least, Joy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Certainly, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Joy Stevens. I am the founder and CEO of the Corporate Giving Network. I use she, her pronouns. I am a mixed race, mature female. I've got olive complexion and I'm wearing a light pink top.
Beautiful. Okay, we're going to jump right in. So our first question today is how do you find and approach corporate funders? And from the funder side, what makes for a thoughtful and effective approach? So I think we're going to start with Randy and hear about it from the funder's point of view.
Great. Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay? Sounds good. Okay. Again, I appreciate the chance to be here, and just a little bit about Columbia Bank. If you're not familiar with, we are one of the largest regional banks in the United States. Certainly the largest bank that's based in the Pacific Northwest, and it's a combination of Columbia Bank and Umpqua Bank. For those of you who may remember Umpqua Bank, we merged back in March of 2023. So we were in 5 states, but the combined bank and a recent acquisition of Pacific Premier down in Southern California, we're now in 8 states. So we're growing. We continue to have great presence and history in the Seattle, Tacoma area, and certainly in the Portland area as well, and growing in Southern California. For this question, all corporations that have an active and impactful, significant community giving presence, corporate giving presence, they have different criteria. And so I won't spend the time to go over all of our different criteria because this is on our website. So it's you can find us very easily at columbiabank.com and certainly see what our priority focus areas are and descriptions about what those are. But I would say certainly as we've gone into 2026, it's much more important than ever before, whether you've worked with us in the past or maybe will be new to us, is the connection to our strategic priority areas. And so you'd be really amazed how often when we're approached by a nonprofit organization, whether it's a small one or a large one, really doesn't matter, that doesn't really take the time to pay attention to what the priority focus areas of the corporate funder is. And so we have changed, we've evolved over time, and certainly in 2026, we have 3 new priority focus areas: financial mobility, housing stability, and community resilience. And there's several there's a list of categories that support each of those priority focus areas. So that's just the start. But I would say, and this is kind of a trend in the corporate giving space, is that we're putting more of an emphasis on having stronger connections with nonprofits, in the sense not just in a potential funding opportunity, we know how important that is, but certainly with volunteer opportunities. So we've always put an emphasis on we call them associates. Our employees are associates, but associate engagement. But that's going to be even a higher priority for us as we look at potential partnerships with nonprofits, whether there's episodic volunteering, group volunteering, or at the highest level, someone on the board of your nonprofit, if that makes sense for someone from Columbia Bank. And so those kinds of connections are really important, along with the alignment with our priority focus areas. So let me just say that and then stop, and thank you.
Thanks, Randy. That's really helpful. Let's see if Sarah or Joy have anything to add there from the arts nonprofit side of things.
I am going to echo what Randy has said. And the thing that I hear from nonprofits, and I work with them day in and day out and have for the last, since 2014, is that alignment is crucial, as Randy said. Do not approach a company or a corporate foundation if you do not see a clear alignment. Don't try to fit a square peg in a round hole. Don't hit your head against the wall, folks. Don't waste your time. It doesn't do you any good. And the other thing that it does is it lets the corporate funder know that you haven't done your homework, you haven't done your research. And it really doesn't allow for a good first impression. And that will be remembered. And it's because of this. It's because nonprofits in the past have tended to throw a very wide net and have reached out and approached anybody, that corporate funders are now forced to go to an invitation only kind of scenario, because like you, they don't have a lot of resources. They're a small group. Companies don't set up CRM groups with lots of folks there. They are not a revenue generating center. So they're lean. And because it's a lean group, they don't have a lot of time to be looking at lots of emails they get, So they've
Yeah.
done the only thing they could really do, and that is to have an invitation only kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Sarah, Michael, do you want to say something about that? How you find and approach
Yeah.
them from that point of view?
Um, I would say I wanted to share a couple of examples that are not what we're always doing, which is looking at each other's program books and donor roles. What are some ways other than that? That's one great way to know someone does support the arts. But I thought I would share a couple of recent examples. Something I really like to track is who is hiring for corporate giving type roles in the market. Within the past couple of years, there was a company that's establishing themselves in the Pacific Northwest. I knew them from another market. I saw that they were hiring a community engagement person. So through that, I knew, great, they're getting started in Seattle. Giving to the arts is going to be one of their strategies. So I was one of the first people to meet with them, and Sam was one of the first orgs in the area to get money from them. And so we've been with them from the beginning. So that's been a great way to figure out how to get ahead of just going through funders that are already in the space. And I do think that let us get more money and be a little bit more creative in what we do with them as we move forward. Um, I also think you do just have to be out and about in the community, and know who you're talking to and come up with graceful ways to be able to follow up later. It's not, oh, don't solicit people when you're at a reception. That's not the time or the place. But some recent examples where I was at a concert and I saw someone that really does not market or give philanthropically, but they were supporting that organization. I chatted with them, later followed up, and it took a long time to turn into a gift, but we found the right fit. There was absolutely alignment with the audience. And so I could see probably why they supported that other organization, and then could go in and say, hey, I saw this. This is what I thought looked successful. Sam could do this as well. So that was a great way to do the homework for them. Like Joy was saying, they don't have a lot of time. They're not extremely well resourced either. Make it easy for them. Think about who they then have to go make the case to and give them those tools. So it's an easy way for them to say, okay, that person, their organization makes sense, and that person is going to be easy to work with and make my life, a little more manageable. So those are some of the things that I really am thinking about.
Yeah. Sarah Bednar, do you have anything to add to that before we move on to our next question?
A couple of quick things to
Yeah.
dovetail into what Sarah just mentioned in terms of maybe less usual approaches. I think we should always remember to look for our close connections. Where do your board members work? Where do your loyal donors, your subscribers, or your volunteers, or your members? Where do they work? How can you establish a relationship with them so they can advocate for you so you get that conversation? Something that also has worked for me is talking to the finance team and asking them to pull a list of 10 to 15 of the top vendors that we spend the most with each year. Obviously, we're supporting them, and sometimes they want to support us back. So that's another tip that's helped me as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Okay, let's move on to our next question. And I think we're going to start with our arts organizations answering this one first. How do you determine what to offer in terms of recognition and benefits? Sarah Bednar, do you want to start that conversation?
Sure, I'll kick us off.
Thank
I
you.
mean, I think the first thing to really think about is listen to what your funders want and need. What are the trends you're seeing? And then, of course, consider what you have to offer in terms of both recognition and engagement or experiences. And think about if you really want to make those a benefit, how you're going to deliver those over time so it's sustainable. Because if you do something and it's successful, your sponsor will want to do it again next year. And so you want to be ready for that. And then you build your list of options and consider when you're building that list, consider how you would incentivize increased giving over time. Now, some people have like levels, some people have a list you can kind of choose from. You need to also choose your model of sponsorship that you're going to work with. And then, review the fair market value of what you're offering. compared to the amount you're requesting to ensure the proportion is right for your organization.
Beautiful. Sarah Michael, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I know at the recent Corporate Giving Network conference, everyone groaned when the idea of grids were brought up, but you need to have your own grid, whether you give it to someone or not. You need to know what you have to offer. I wouldn't, as much as possible, don't just send it to people and say, here you go, these are the options. You're going to have to customize it, but that's a great way for you to know exactly what you have to offer and understand which buckets do they fall into. So for Sam, because I'm not a performing arts institution, I have tons of ticket inventory, which is amazing. So I can really work hard on employee engagement. So with one organization, their offices close over the holiday period. And so it's a company that really has stopped giving to the arts. Sam has managed to hold on to it, I think, because we get thousands of employees that come over that closed holiday period. So it's really worth it to them. They're getting great value out of it. And each year it's really, they know their employees are starting to get used to it and want to see it again. So I know that's going to work for them. They also still want their logo. So it's thinking about how I can meet those other metrics. And a lot of partners will know this is my top priority, but they usually have additional things that they can tick off. So recently I was meeting with someone who was really interested in an event sponsorship, but then they learned about some of those other employee benefits, some of the ways they can partner with us throughout the year beyond just that one event. And knowing what those are when you sit down with them is really helpful. And then you need to track what they are so you can keep everyone balanced, sort of like what Sarah was saying. And that's why I say you need to have a secret grid in your mind, even if you're not handing it out to people. And the customization can be tricky to then make sure you deliver all those benefits. So just be really careful about documentation and follow through on that.
Joy, you came off mute. Did you have something to add there?
Oh, I just want folks to keep in mind their greatest asset is their subscribers, the donor base, the folks who come in through the door, whether it is to come to the symphony or to watch a play. That is by far the things that is your greatest asset. Because if you think about it, a sponsor, if we're talking about sponsors now, which seems like this question is kind of hinting at that, sponsors are really looking at growing their business. And a way for you to demonstrate to a potential sponsor that you can help them grow their business or improve their brand image or help them keep their existing customers is for you to know the demographics and the psychographics of who your subscribers are. And that's not easy to do.
Yeah.
Does Sam's subscribers have the same kind of demographics and psychographics and live in the same area where Columbia Bank wants to grow their business? Why? Because they've just opened a new bank in the area and they want to increase depositors. So,
Right.
and that's not easy to capture. I've found even that some organizations don't even capture where somebody works, where their subscribers work. At minimum, try to do that because that'll make your life a lot easier. But definitely just bear in mind that your donor base is your greatest asset and therefore your biggest benefit that you have to sell.
Yeah. I think that segues really well into the funder side of this question for Randy. What do you value in terms of recognition and engagement benefits?
Well, certainly, and this is really near and dear to my heart and very timely because one of the programs that I took over starting this year is what we call the Associate Driven Sponsorship Program. So all told, it's $2-3 million perhaps of sponsorships that range from $500 to $10,000 all over our footprint. And we tie these sponsorship, this particular program, Now, Columbia Bank has some major sponsorships. If any Seahawks fans on this call, had a terrific, awesome year, the season last year. And if you watched the games or if you were at Lumen Field, you could see around the rim the Columbia Bank. So those are some of our major marketing partnerships and our teams, sports teams sponsorships, which are terrific. But I'm talking about the smaller ones that may be more relevant for this conversation. And it ties into our associate engagement because these are sponsorships that are recommended by our employees who work with nonprofits. And let me state that when I'm talking about sponsorships, these are bank funds. It's totally separate from the funds that come out of the Columbia Bank Community Impact Fund, which is a separate 501c3. It's our foundation, if you are a corporate foundation. So those funds are separate, legally separate. Decision making is separate. And so when it comes to sponsorships, certainly marketing, benefits, business relationships are very important, but it's all about relationships. So in the case of the associate driven sponsorship program, recommended by associates who work with the nonprofits as a volunteer, or maybe they bank with that particular organization and they recommend a sponsorship. And so there's a series of assets that we provide, but sure, logo is important. Sure, placement in their programs important. The larger sponsorships, there's maybe a up on the screen if you walk into the room, or maybe a speaking opportunity. Depends on what it is. But I think those things are really important to talk with the funder. What would help drive visibility for you as a funder, as a sponsor? And what Joy said about it's really important to just know maybe what their business objectives could be for that particular area. Maybe we're growing and we want to really let people know about the new branches in the area. I'm just speaking from our experience or something like that, where there's some business relation. And that's another growing trend in terms of corporate giving, is more of the giving, whether it's through the corporate foundation or through these sponsorships, is more aligned these days with the strategy of the corporation, which makes sense. And so it's kind of an extension. And so it allows us to talk with folks in the community, connect with them. And these sponsorships are they're really important for, we know, for the nonprofit and their community, but it's also very important for us and our associates who love to go to these things and be in community with the nonprofit.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think that is a great transition to our question about what trends or changes are you seeing in corporate giving? You already addressed that a bit, Randy, but are there any other trends or changes that you're seeing?
Yeah, I would say the alignment. I mean, times are challenging. I mean, for that's a very broad statement. I know that, but even in the corporate giving space, times are challenging, and we're proud to say that we're not pulling back in terms of our giving. If anything, the amount that we're giving through our Community Impact Fund, formerly our Umpqua Bank Charitable Foundation, but it's now the Impact Fund, and through our bank, I think is actually increasing as we are expanding. So we're proud to say that, and proud to connect our people, our employees, our associates with nonprofits in their communities. I mean, that kind of localization, deploying our resources, whether it's financial or human, into local communities is really important to us. So that's kind of a trend, relying on our people, alignment with the priority focus areas is really important. Something that Joy said that I just want to reiterate, that's another major change for Columbia Bank. We are now, if you've gone to our website and you're thinking, oh, I want to apply for a spring community grant or a summer community grant, you can't do that. It is invitation only. So more corporations are, because of the deluge of applications we have received over time, we have to go through now an invitation only process. An example, before this year, we would do hundreds per cycle. With 3 cycles a year, we would hundreds and hundreds of applications, and we would decline 85% of those. That doesn't feel good from a organizational standpoint. It doesn't make me feel good as an individual person. Just I'm declining 85% of those who apply. That doesn't feel good on a human level. So, and it's not a good use of your time if you're not clearly aligned with our priorities. So those are just some of the trends.
Yeah. Sarah Michael, do you have thoughts on that from your side of things? What are you seeing?
I think something I'm feeling in daily work is because there is just kind of a lot more conservative thinking in terms of how to give. We're having to have much larger portfolios so that we are always bringing new people into the pipeline. There's always going to be people that are falling off. I feel even 10 years ago, you could kind of say, I trust that these people are going to continue with me for the next few years. I think even if things are going really well, I never trust that someone's going to continue with me next year. So I have a heightened focus on reporting back, staying in touch with the funder throughout the period, just so that I never go quiet and I don't want to overwhelm them with information. You need to give them the right information. Um, but just showing, hey, we're effectively using your money, you're using your benefits. If you have a year-long partnership, you shouldn't find out at month 10, oops, they haven't used any of my perks. So it's monitoring what's happening throughout the year, so that when the renewal time comes, you're really thinking about that and ready. Um, I think too, there was more focus just on wanting to have a public presence, and that is gone. So I think that's something that Sarah was talking about earlier too. So it's just what are those other engagement things that we can offer?
Yeah, Sarah Bednar, do you want to add anything to that?
I think a couple of things. Perhaps at a higher level, I'm seeing this increased interest in corporate giving in terms of a traditional slash commercial sponsorship, where it's like what Joy was talking about, attracting a number of people, helping grow a business, versus a values aligned sponsorship. And so, what that means
Mm,
at the theater is when we have a very popular show like Come From Away, it might be a more traditional shape. But when it's something like Appropriate or Mary Jane, where you're talking about very deep and specific topics, it's going to be a values aligned sponsorship.
mm,
And then that dictates, you've got your options for benefits, and then you can pick from those that align best with what the organization is looking for in their sponsorship. And the
mm.
other trend I'm seeing is this awareness of logo soup. And so one of the ways I've addressed that, I know Joy has talked about this as well in her different corporate giving communities, but that logo soup. So we've reduced the number of sponsors, we've upped the level and reduced the number of sponsors of our shows, but we've allowed like the community-based programs and the education-based programs to be a little bit more expansive and inclusive because we think that's the place for it. So you have to kind of pick and choose and understand what your sponsors are looking for and make sure that you're aligning with them at that level as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Joy, did you have something to add
Yeah,
before we
I,
move
I
on to
just
our last question?
with regarding trends and changes, I think, when you're talking about trends, you have to take a look at what's going on for at a not so much at a geopolitical level, but certainly that can come into play, certainly from a socioeconomic position. Take a look at 2024. That was a great year for corporate giving. It was record levels in terms of corporate giving. If you look at your Giving USA numbers, we were lucky in 2024. Oh, look at 2024. It was a good year. It was a good, economically speaking, 2024 was a great year. And there's a direct correlation between the health of the US economy and how much is given away to nonprofits. That's just been proven year over year. Now, 2025 numbers are not out yet. They won't be out till the middle of June. And I don't think we need to think too long and hard as to what the outcome is going to be and what 2025 corporate giving numbers are going to look like. If you take a look at what happened in 2025, the executive orders that came down, the big, beautiful bill, and all these things, there was a lot of uncertainty. AI became a big push. Companies are right sizing their workforce, they're laying people off. And they're saying all kinds of things like, oh, AI can do that job. But now the trend, when you take a look at the larger employers, they are looking at streamlining their workforce. And it is not uncommon for us to see stories in the paper, whether you read the Business Sound a Puget Sound Business Journal or the Wall Street Journal of companies laying people off. And that's going to affect us. That's going to affect corporate giving. That coupled with the
Yeah.
fact that nonprofits have lost some of their government funding, both from a state and federal level, and
Yeah.
you don't want to give up the services that you offer. You don't want to have to, close the curtains and keep the curtains closed. You want to continue to provide the great programming that you do. So you have to look for the money elsewhere. Where are they looking? Corporate giving. 49% of
Yeah.
nonprofits are now looking at corporate giving. I've never seen that number that high before. So,
Yeah.
from a trending perspective, these are the things we're seeing.
Yeah, for sure. I think that our last question is our last prepared question is when we are seeing these trends in times of tighter budgets, arts funding is often cut first. So, how do you make the case to sustain that arts funding? Sarah Bednar, do you want to start us off?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Um, I think that we all know that the arts gathers our community, it presents different perspectives, it promotes civic and civil dialogue when that has broken down in our culture. But beyond that, really what I am looking at and present is how the arts are an economic driver. How many people we employ, the impact we have on our community when we hold performances. That's based on people going out to dinner and then they get childcare and then they use transportation and they pay for parking and all these ways that a ticket holder will come into Seattle Center and Seattle to engage with Seattle Rep, enjoy a show, and spend some of their hard-earned dollars. And so there's a high economic impact. And also arts as a workforce development driver. So we've got a really strong workforce development program at Seattle Rep. We just got state certified, the first one in the state, the first performing arts organization in the state to be certified. And we're nationally known. And so that's something that we are also stressing this year.
Yeah. Sarah Michael, how are you thinking about this?
Those are great points. Wonderful things to think about and sort of keep banging the drum when you're talking to people with those stories. It really matters. I think additional things that I'm really looking at are what are the different programs or events where I have a audience that is maybe overrepresented. So an example of that might be your higher level donor events. You are overrepresented with higher income, wealthier, higher income people who may be more likely to align with a wealth management firm. Or for Sam, I can work with the auction houses. Think about what stands out. We're not a good fit for just broad-based general marketing. Usually our audiences are not large enough for that. I was also talking with another group this week. I serve on their board, and they have an annual event each year where the CEOs of local arts orgs are overrepresented. So I said, you need to go and find those consultants that those people are constantly hiring, or think about the construction firms that those CEOs are hiring for their capital projects. They're they're not going to get a sponsorship from Target, but they could get a sponsorship from those really closely aligned partners. So think
Yeah.
about in your story, what do you have that could work in sort of that framework?
Yeah. Randy, do you mind addressing, the arts is not explicitly one of your focus areas. So how can folks make the case for arts organizations and have them kind of align with those priority areas?
Yes, thanks, Jordan. Prior to this year, our priority focus areas were broader, much broader. So we've now swung back to more strategic, focused alignment with our business objectives and our business philosophy, if you will, in terms of growing in the Western United States. And as I look a little bit. Sad to say, the word arts is not on our website there. But let me just be clear: we do support the arts. Columbia Bank supports the arts in major ways and small ways, and whether sponsorships and potential grants as well, because we know, and something Sarah Bednar said about the economic driver or engine is really important. And certainly you see the word workforce and workforce readiness, economic development throughout our information on our website. And so I think from kind of a non-traditional look at the arts, not just the performances are really important, and getting underserved populations through those performances are really important, and we still support those kinds of things. But certainly as an economic driver for a community, and especially if it's an urban community, but even a rural, we fund a lot of rural communities, and how important the arts is in a small community in Idaho or Northern California, Southern Oregon or something like that, or in Eastern Washington. Very important. But I think it goes back to one of the things I said at the beginning is the importance of our employees being engaged. And I think that is one of the biggest factors now. It was large before, and it's one of the biggest factors in terms of the potential for support. And if you don't have that, then and you're not already connected to us in some other way, it's going to be hard to get any kind of funding from Columbia Bank or the Columbia Bank Impact Fund. So there are ways, we can talk about it later today, but certainly on our website, ways to get involved as in terms of if you're open to volunteers from the bank to support your organization, your cause, because we have a lot of arts lovers in the bank, and happy to make the connection.
Wonderful. Okay. Joy, do you have something quick to
Yeah,
add? I want to make sure we have a
sure.
chance to.
I'll make this quick. Two things.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Number one, always remember this, that pendulum is going to swing the other way. We're going to be back to good times, and things are going to be rosy, and the economy is going to improve again, and so on and so forth. Folks, you've seen it. If you're, in your very early 40s, or maybe you've just turned 40, and upwards from there, you have seen this. You've seen this before, and that pendulum is going to switch the other way. Times are going to be good. But one thing I will please share with you, if I may, and this is something that I hear from corporate funders a lot, is why do they only get in touch with me when they want something? So here's what I have to say for you. Even if a company is not funding you this year, or they didn't fund you last year, stay in touch with them. Stewardship is paramount to you being successful in the future, because when that pendulum does go the other way, the companies, they're going to remember the ones that stayed in touch with them even when they weren't giving to the organization. So make sure you have a nice stewardship program in place.
Yeah, very important. Thank you so much. Oh, all right. I am going to welcome my colleague Katie Corella on, and she is going to surface some questions that have been put in the chat. If you have questions that you are interested in just coming off mute and asking, if you want to raise your hand in Zoom, and we'll get through our chat questions, and then we'll answer some hand raised questions.
Yeah, thank you. I've flagged a few things from the chat. I am Katie Corella, she, her pronouns. I'm a middle-aged woman who is wearing a kind of rust-colored shirt sitting in front of a blurred background with short hair pulled half up. So we got a question from Alicia Crank in the chat. Alicia, I'm not sure if you want to come off mute. I'm also happy to read it to the panelists.
Oh, hi. Good morning. So sorry. I'm multitasking. Hi, everybody. Alicia Crank, Seattle Opera. Just started there, actually. It's this week, too. I see a lot of familiar faces in here. Hi, Joy. So my question was pretty much, how do you leverage, especially what's going on right now with governmental funding and the administration that we're working under? What are maybe some tips or tricks or things that you've seen as far as moves management might be concerned, in leveraging getting more kind of corporate sponsorships and dollars to offset some of the decreased funding that we're seeing governmentally across the arts? And I haven't had coffee yet, so I'm sorry if that question did not form completely the way that I'm thinking about it in my head.
Yeah, if I may, I'll just bridge back to the last thing that I said, Alicia. When we're looking at moves management, I think the thing that we need to focus on is make sure you are continuing to build your pipeline. Okay, because if you're not getting funding that you were used to getting in the past, governmental funding is gone. Well, are you filling your pipeline with new prospects? And that's just part of the moves management process. And the other thing that I shared is stewardship. That's part of the moves management process as well. Make sure you're not neglecting the people who have given to you in the past. And even now, Alicia, you're in a unique position because you're just starting. And so, you're somebody who could go back even before COVID. Who supported the opera before COVID? And can you renew those relationships? Now, you're stepping into the shoes of somebody who did a great job over at the opera. So I would imagine, yes, Julia did a fabulous job then. I'm sure she has maintained relationships, even in years when companies did not give to the opera. And that makes it easier for you when you're picking up the baton and running with it, to introduce yourself, have coffee, have lunch, whatever the case might be, and let them get to know you and what a great job you're going to do, because you've got lots of experience in this area.
Yeah. I want to say, let me clarify. I'm new to Seattle Opera, but not to corporate philanthropy.
That's right.
But it is the first time that I have to work with kind of largely governmental ArtsFund dollars. And like you said, Joy, just tapping back in with Julia. She and I are having coffee in the next couple of weeks and kind of getting that input from her on what she saw, what was working there, and how to re-engage. So thank you for that.
Great. We have my internet connection might be a little slow here. We have a great question that's come up a couple of times now. Just talking a little bit more about networking. So, Carolina asked, what are some of your favorite networking events in the Seattle area? And then Teresa asked, are there networking recommendations to sort of start to build those relationships?
Don't mean to monopolize this, folks, but you got to go where the corporate funders are. And one of the best places to do that is at the Puget Sound Business Journal Corporate Citizenship Awards Luncheon. The room is going to be full. May the 12th. It is at the Four Seasons, 99 Union. And unfortunately, it is sold out. I was able to reach out to Puget Sound Business Journal and I secured a table of 12. And but that's where they hang out because they're going to be recognized. Randy, Columbia Bank is going to be there. I'm not sure who's going to be representing the bank because David Moore Devine told me that he's going to be out of town, he believes, on May the 12th, so he might not be able to be there. But for sure, there's going to be people there from Columbia Bank.
Sure.
Because they're being recognized as one of a wonderful philanthropic contributor to the nonprofit sector. So that's my number one thing. Every year, that's the first thing I put down in my calendar is to go to that because they're there.
Right. And thank you, Joy. And just to follow up on that, I was turning and I right, and I'm looking at the plaque that we received last year because I went up there and we received a nice plaque. It was the first time at the Puget Sound Business Journal luncheon. Terrific a gathering of corporate funders and nonprofit professionals. If you're we're talking about Seattle area, but in Portland, same thing. Portland Business Journal, we get recognized every year. That's a great place, and it's made me think about because this is spring gala season. There's spring gala season. There's fall gala season. So I go to a lot of galas and. I would say whether it's your organization's gala or a special event, or you go to another nonprofit's one, I'm okay with folks approaching me and like, oh, there's Columbia Banks in the room because you see they're a sponsor, and you can go to they have a table and go and introduce yourself because there's always a networking component, and I try to because I think it's part of my job. I'm not one of those who just okay the program starts at 6. I will arrive at 6 and sit at my table and not talk to anybody other than my own colleagues. I don't like that. That's not a good use of our time, my time. I like to go to the reception to network with my fellow corporate funders and nonprofit folks. So I think that kind of strategy is what, because like Joey said, go where corporate funders are. Many corporate funders go to these things, and so that's a great place to meet them or to re-engage with them in a more informal way, more social way.
And Sarah, I saw you come off mute. Sarah
Yeah.
Michael, yeah.
I would love if there was just one place to go and you knew you could walk out with some new friends. I think for me, it's really just getting to know our donors and our board members. And so then if they're going to an event, they can reach out to me and say, hey, would you like to join me? And making sure that I say yes to these opportunities. You will meet so many more people if you're with someone who already knows that room and can make introductions, and then you can continue those conversations. I'm also more of an introvert. You can go and do these things even if you are an introvert. And it really helps if you have someone who can be a friendly face and help work your way around the room with you. I think too, if you are in an organization where your role is only, like I'm only corporate foundation government, but I do need to get to know the individual donors. That connects to what I'm doing for my job. So making sure I go to the individual events that we have so I can build those relationships and they remember I'm here and they can take me to things or make connections when they meet someone, at Bank of America and help us reinforce that relationship, things like that. So I hope that's helpful.
Another thing are the Chamber of Commerce. If you take a look at, and there's the two biggies in town is the Seattle Chamber of Commerce, and they've got a fabulous roster of businesses who belong. And then the Bellevue Chamber of Commerce. I mean, Pearl Leon of Amazon is the board chair at the Bellevue Chamber of Commerce. And you go to that event, they hang out there. So those are places, Sarah, you say, I wish you could go to one place where they all are. Two things, whether it is the Portland Business Journal Awards ceremony, because they've got one down there as well, or whether it is the Puget Sound Business Journal Awards luncheon, and then the Chamber of Commerce. Those was probably, and lastly, you may have heard the Columbia Tower Club is closing at the end of this month. I'm very sad. I have been a member there for the last 10 years, and we have a community impact committee that gave space to nonprofits. Now, that's closing. However, I am moving my volunteering work that I do for the nonprofit sector over to the World Trade Center on Alaska Way. As a matter of fact, we're going to be there this evening. So that's the other thing is, in addition to the Chamber of Commerce, there are these clubs in town where business people hang out, and that's where you want to go. So World Trade Center, Rainier Club, and so on.
Great. Thanks for your insights. We have a question from Laura Bentley. Laura, did you want to come off mute to ask that question?
Hi,
All right.
sure.
Thanks, Laura.
What would you recommend for fiscally sponsored organizations? I remember from Joy's talk saying that there wasn't a lot of space for matches for smaller groups like that. Are there specific areas of corporate giving that we should investigate? Or what would you recommend we do for readiness in the future?
Laura, I did say that the majority of corporate funders prefer their recipients to be 501c3. The only one that I can think of right at the top of my head who will sponsor or will support a fiscally sponsored organization is REI. Now, if you can put a play out on in a park, you're golden. There you go. But outside of that, and Randy, I don't know, I believe your requirement is that it does need to be 501c3. However, your associate driven sponsorship program does make an exception to that, I believe. It doesn't have to be a 501c3. So Laura, if you know people who work at Columbia Bank and who support the work that you do, speak to them, because there are ways that you can bring in revenue for your organization.
Yeah, just to add to that again, Joy, if you're interested in funding through the Columbia Bank Community Impact Fund, which is the charitable foundation of the bank, you have to be a 501c3. But if it's through our associate-driven sponsorship program, bank funds, more flexibility, 501c3, we support chambers, if those are C6s, trade associations, again, those are different types of funds, but we have flexibility in the broad universe of Columbia Bank.
And if I may explain why that is the case, is because when a company puts money into their private foundation, they have taken a tax deduction. So they're limited to who they can give their money to. And because they've taken a tax deduction, when they've put the money into their foundation, the money that's in that foundation must go to a 501c3. That's the reason behind it, in case you're wondering.
Right, but we're sponsored by Shunpike, so we're a fiscally sponsored organization that is under that.
Yeah, but they're, I mean, I can't speak for all of them, but the whole thing, I don't know, maybe somebody will help you, but you know, it really comes down to who's getting the money, what are they going to do with it, and what is the outcome, what is the social impact of that money we've invested, you know.
I think too, if you're fiscally sponsored, it probably means you're a smaller organization. So as you're saying, it's harder to offer some of the other benefits we do. And so when you're in that phase, it's really relationship based. So it's figuring out who is on your board, who's coming to your programs, where do they work, starting small and building those relationships that already exist will be probably easier for you than trying to reach out to someone like Randy when there's not that connection and there's not that like large portfolio of benefits or engagement that you can offer.
And the other thing about it as well, when you go through the 501c3 tax exempt certification process, it's very thorough. And what it says to the donor, whether it's an individual donor, whether it's a corporate donor, is that the IRS has looked at you very, very carefully. They've examined the work you do, how you do it, who serves on your board, whether you've got bylaws in place, do you have a conflict of interest policy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what that tells the donor is that this is an organization that I can quite safely and confidently invest in because the IRS, they've done their due diligence and looked at this organization very closely. Whereas if you're fiscally sponsored, that deep dive has not occurred.
Let's go ahead. I think we have time for one more question, and I want to pose this question, I think, to Sarah Bednar. It was a follow-up question about that great language you used, logo soup. And Kitty wanted to know if we could hear more about logo soup. And I think, you know, are you saying that it's great to have more regional sponsors? Yeah, if you could just talk a little bit more about kind of what you've learned related to logo soup.
Sure. I think of logo soup as you look at a page and there's a ton of logos, and it's a big soup and there's lots of ingredients in it. And sometimes that's useful, sometimes it's not. More and more, one of the trends I'm seeing is that companies want to have fewer logo. They want to be on a page with fewer logos. That to me means that we will ask them to invest more in Seattle Rep to have that. And so if you look at, for instance, you can go to Encore Media, you can see all the show programs, and you can take a look at Seattle Reps. You look at our title page, we might have 2 to 3 individual sponsors. Then we might have a couple of organizational, like corporate sponsors, and 1 or 2 season sponsors. There's going to be plenty of white space and lots of visibility. If you go to our education and community programs, you're going to see a wider variety and more names and logos there. That's because we feel like that's a place where it is really community driven. We've got more sponsors at smaller levels. We want to give them visibility. They like to know they're in community with one another, and they're good with that. And so are we, because we appreciate both kinds and need both kinds of support. And then if you look at our gala, we'll have 5, 6 logos. And so it's somewhere in between. So you just have to, I think it's helpful to look at your view, the programs and shows and events you're looking for sponsorship, and determine what does the community, what do your funders need, want, and expect to see there? And then what can you ask for? And make sure it's in alignment, as Randy and Joy and all of us have underscored, with those corporations' needs and desires. So yeah, think about how many ingredients you want in your soup, and visually how busy it is.
Yes, thank you so much. I think we are going to wrap it up there. Really appreciate everyone joining us today, and a big thank you to Randy and Sarah Michael and Sarah Bednar and Joy for being here today. Thank you so much for taking your time. We will follow up with everyone who registered for today's panel with the link to the recording. If you are interested in continuing the conversation online among peers, you can join us in the Cultural Partners Connect Slack channel, where we'll be talking about takeaways and further curiosities. And we can share a link to joining that channel in our follow-up email. We'd like to say a final thank you to our sponsors, Wells Fargo, Columbia Bank Community Impact Fund, and For Culture. And finally, when you close out of our Zoom meeting, there will be a brief survey that pops up. Please take a couple minutes to complete it. It's anonymous. That helps us plan events and trainings that will be most valuable to the community. I don't know if any of our panelists have like a last word they want to say as we are signing off. We've just got a couple more minutes here.
I just want to say one thing, if I may. I am a big believer in the arts. I love the arts. And I think one of the things that the arts does, especially, is it's a wonderful help for mental. You don't have to go far to find a white paper that says how the arts benefit somebody whose mental health is maybe not where it needs to be. You go to Sam, or you go to, you just lose yourself in a play or the ballet, and it's so good for your mental health. And that, to me, is a huge impact that the work you do makes. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you so much, Joy. Totally agree. It very much helps my mental health. Yeah, Randy.
Yeah, just a quick note. Thank you for the opportunity. I know there's lots of questions and more possibilities for engagement. So please check out, if you haven't already checked out, our Community Impact and Partnerships page on our website. Embedded in that is our Community Impact Engagement document that has a lot of information about other resources that you can access from Columbia Bank to help your cause and your community. And if you have questions, you want to reach out, go ahead and send an email to our community inbox, columbiabank@community.com. community@columbiabank.com, and address it to me, and just say, hey, we're on this the wonderful ArtsFund sponsored webinar, and just have a question. Be patient. I may not get back to you right away, but we get a lot of emails. But I'm open to just having the conversation or referring you. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Randy. We'll make sure to include that in our follow-up email as well, so that folks have that accessible, and really appreciate that offer. All right, with that, I think we'll say not good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.